George Harrison, who used to be known as the Quiet Beetle.
You know, I just can't do that kind of thing, but...
He can't relate to all the hype about the British band Oasis.
Felt like I was waiting to go to the electric chair.
But as far as George is concerned, the band would be better off without their lead singer.
Maybe because he ran out of good ones of his own.
Well, now we've got that on record.
George Harrison, the so-called Quiet Beetle, might have kept a low profile in public, but when it came to his private opinions on other musicians, he was anything but timid. Sure, Lennon's rants were notorious, and McCartney's jabs were sharp, but Harrison's critiques were a different breed altogether, calm, cutting, and completely unapologetic. And while Harrison often preferred to stay out of the limelight, when he did speak up, he didn't just throw shade, he swung a scythe. Turns out that behind his reserved exterior was a ruthless critic who held some of his peers in the lowest of regard. First on the chopping block is Neil Young, a man practically worshipped by anyone with an ear for alternative rock and soul-bearing lyrics. Neil might have been celebrated for his grungy guitar riffs, but to George, he was nothing short of a hack. In fact, during a recording session in 1992, Harrison didn't mince his words when asked what he thought of Young's playing, bluntly declaring, "I hate it. Yeah, I can't stand it."
Do you hear Neil Young's Arc Weld? It's what?
No.
It's live. And what was
the one with
the double
jam? Is that one?
No. Well, no. They did a tour with Hit Them, but on the one of the CDs is just feedback. He just has to see the feedback from the gigs, and it's great if you get into where he's at, you know. But the actual sound.
I'm not a Neil Young fan personally. I
just think his lead playing is just.
I hate it.
Do you?
Yeah, I can't stand it.
This wasn't a casual comment either. Harrison was on a roll, even mocking Young's guitar style with exaggerated strumming, much to the amusement of his fellow musicians.
It's that one string. I mean, it's good for a laugh, but you know, the thing is, he's serious.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Everything all the way up. Yeah. That's what you always do.
Yeah, okay.
Everything, no matter what they give you,
Yeah.
just go like, yeah, right. There's a way to do it like that. Yeah. See? The guitar is doing it.
In Harrison's mind, Young's performance wasn't exactly something to admire. It was more of a comic relief, a caricature of guitar solos rather than the real deal. And it wasn't just a random swipe. Harrison had once shared a stage with Young and recalled watching his performance from the sidelines, baffled as he watched Young hunch over his guitar in what George later called a mess of distorted noise. "It's good for a laugh," he joked, revealing that even legends can lose patience when forced to watch what they consider mediocrity.
He was on, we did this show with him.
The Dylan thing?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I could just hear it coming from the other side of the stage, and I don't know, I looked around, looked at Eric like, is that, what's going on? Like he did the solo in the middle, and then he just kind of looked at me like, don't look at me, it's not me.
Then of course we have Oasis, the Britpop giants who claim to be the heirs to the Beatles' throne. In the mid-90s, Noel and Liam Gallagher couldn't get enough of comparing themselves to John and Paul.
The Beatles, no, the Beatles. With the Beatles.
Yeah, I love the Beatles. You know, bumped into John Lennon on the Cosmic.
This is one of my favourite Beatles albums.
But yeah, my son Lennon called him after John Lennon, man, without a doubt.
But as far as George was concerned, that comparison was pure fantasy. Harrison laid into them with all the disdain he could muster, slamming their music as shallow and calling frontman Liam Gallagher a pain.
This just in from ex-Beatle George Harrison, who just told some French reporters that he found Oasis to be, quote, not very interesting.
Oasis may have topped the music charts, but Harrison tells the French daily Le Figaro the music group doesn't impress him, and despite what Harrison says are attempts by the Gallagher brothers to emulate the Beatles, Oasis is not very interesting.
And finally, Oasis lead singer Liam Gallagher has been greatly criticised by one of his biggest heroes, former Beatle George Harrison. Oasis have always made it well known what massive Beatles fans they are, But as far as George is concerned, the band would be better off without their lead singer.
He's like a bit out of date. You know, I mean, he's a bit of a... It's just silly. It's silly. I feel a bit sorry for him, really, because I think he's totally missed the bus. And I think it was proven when you see the band without him singing. You know, they're more in tune, and they can, you know, I mean, he's just excess baggage, I think. And all he does is, you know, make people think what a bunch of prannies they are.
Apparently, the feeling was mutual. After Harrison's comments spread like wildfire, the hot-headed Liam responded in true Oasis fashion, launching into a tirade and threatening to sock the older musician if he ever saw him. "Leave their Zimmer frames at home," Liam snarled, itching for a fight. But Harrison, ever unbothered, let the remark slide, considering the matter settled. He knew a thing or two about musical longevity, and in his eyes, Oasis was a blip on the radar compared to the legends of rock he admired. As far as he was concerned, Oasis's loud-mouthed antics didn't hold a candle to the Beatles' own groundbreaking creativity and depth. To George, they were wannabes barking at the real icons of rock history.
You know what I mean? So it goes to show that all the time the Beatles and all that stuff that he's still stupid. He's a silly one because he reads the press. How does he know I'm silly? I've got 40 GCSEs, mate, I'm not silly.
Surprisingly, Harrison's sharp tongue didn't spare his own musical roots, particularly when it came to another Merseybeat-styled band, the Hollies. Despite sharing a northern heritage, Harrison didn't let regional camaraderie get in the way of his opinion, which was scathing. His criticism started in 1965, when the Hollies had the audacity to cover one of his songs, "If I Needed Someone." Rather than feeling flattered, George was furious. He publicly slammed the cover, calling it rubbish, and lamenting that it sounded like a half-hearted jam session between strangers. The Hollies version lacked any of the soul and depth that Harrison felt the song deserved, and he made his disdain clear in an interview, insisting that he hadn't written it for the Hollies. The rebuke sparked a feud, with Graham Nash, the Hollies' lead vocalist, later snapping back that he was tired of everything the Beatles said being taken as gospel. But Harrison was unmoved. To him, the Hollies' attempt was nothing more than musical butchery, and he didn't hesitate to say so. And let's not forget Harrison's scorn for the punk rock scene, particularly the Sex Pistols. By the late 70s, punk had erupted onto the scene with a raw fury, and although some saw it as a revival of rock's rebellious spirit, George didn't buy it for a second. He didn't just dislike the Pistols' music, he found the entire punk movement amateurish, dismissing their musicianship as rubbish and slamming their songs as a lot of noise and nothing. Harrison thought punk lacked any of the finesse and craftsmanship he valued in music, and he was baffled that anyone would celebrate it as a legitimate genre. The irony, of course, is that Lennon himself had admitted to enjoying a bit of punk, and even some Beatles fans found punk's raw energy reminiscent of the early days of rock. But not George.
Now, as I said, I was listening to classical music and not really following it. I saw Sid Vicious die and all that on video in New York because they were all coming over here to make it in the Big Apple, as they called it. So whoever came through, I could see him on this cable TV thing they have here. So I saw Blondie when she was unknown on the cable TV. I saw Vicious when he was living in the hotel being filmed and doing all that stuff, whenever that was, mid-70s.
How much of the Pistols' music have you heard?
Only whatever they did a video of it. You know, there was a lot of videos of them down at Max's or wherever the hell they were hanging out and playing, and Johnny Rotten and all that stuff. And yeah, great. To me, initially on Impact, seeing all that, I thought, oh, that's how we used to behave at the cabin before Brian told us to stop throwing up and sleeping on stage and swearing. I mean, like in Hamburg, I used to sleep on stage. We used to eat on stage. We used to swear on stage. We were absolutely au natural. But nowadays, they don't have to put a shine over on it to get a record contract, even though they are having a hard time with it. But still, yeah, I think it's great.
In a 1979 interview, he went even further, empathizing with the bleak social reality behind the movement, but saying that spreading more negativity wasn't the solution. In his mind, punk was a dead-end road, more of an angry shout than any kind of meaningful contribution to music. To George, punk's nihilism was simply noise without purpose, a message he found hollow and uninspiring. Finally, there was Elton John, a star who, like the Beatles, dominated charts and arenas with an undeniable flair. Harrison, however, saw nothing of interest in Elton's music. In the 70s, while John was pumping out hit after hit, Harrison had shifted his own focus entirely to Indian music and spiritual pursuits, and by comparison, Elton's pop styling sounded formulaic and shallow. To George, Elton's songs were just 4 chords, some lyrics, shake well and serve, as he snidely put it. In his eyes, Elton wasn't breaking new ground. He was just rehashing the same recipe over and over again. Harrison even went so far as to say that the only song of Elton's he could even remotely tolerate was one he'd written many years ago, long before he'd become the pop juggernaut he was in the 70s. It's safe to say Elton's flamboyant rock opera style didn't exactly mesh with Harrison's more introspective, spiritually focused tastes. George Harrison might have been dubbed the quiet one, but behind that soft-spoken exterior was a fierce critic who didn't suffer fools gladly, least of all in the world of music. To him, great music required depth, soul, and authenticity, and he was never afraid to speak up when he found other musicians falling short of those ideals. In a world that preferred to remember him as the gentle, meditative Beatle, Harrison's biting words were a reminder that this quiet man had a voice as sharp as any axe, and he wasn't afraid to use it. If George didn't like your sound, you'd hear about it, whether you liked it or not.